Can you hear me all right? Can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
We can hear you.
Yeah, someone, Olade, somebody was trying to say something, I don't know.
No, I said we can hear you, sir. I said we can hear you.
Okay. I was asking a question.
I didn't have any challenge at mine.
Okay. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. To reiterate what we tried to do the last time, your research instruments are tools. You know, when they say instruments, you might think we're talking about piano. Someone might think we're talking about pianos or guitars or drums. No. Research instruments are items that is used to elicit information from respondents. You know, it could be questionnaires, it could be interviews, it could be focus group discussions, you know. There are a litany of instruments that you could use as a researcher to generate information from your respondents. Another very important component of research instruments is that it must be derived from questionnaire. You know, your research instrument must necessarily be derived from your questionnaires. You draw your instrument from your questionnaires. Now, research question 1, research question 2, research question 3, research question 4. Another thing is, I was an internal examiner yesterday for some of our students here, and you see students, master's degree students, come up with 3 questions. For masters, no, at least 5 research questions. I can grudgingly accept 4 research questions. And when you have 5 research questions, you should have 5 objectives. When you have 5 objectives, you should have 5 hypotheses. These 5 hypotheses will be tested in your chapter 4. But you cannot have 3 research questions and you have 2 hypotheses, for instance. You cannot have 5 research questions and you have 4 hypotheses, for instance. Every research questions drawn from your research objectives must be tested, you know, must have a hypothesis. Now, these hypotheses should also have some moderating variables that sometimes determine or impact or perhaps influence how your main variable, what do you call it now? That's coming now. The variables, you have 2 types of variables. Can you not remember?
Dependent and independent.
Exactly, I'm waiting for that. Exactly, the dependent and what? Independent variables. So what I'm trying to say is that there are moderating variables that can, you know, impact how the dependent and independent variables, you know, interact, you know, or you know. So when you have, like, in your demographic data while you're preparing your instruments, that demographic data should include those moderating variables. It could be age, gender, you know, level. Sometimes if your study is on maybe you're looking at the police force, impact of policing practices, for instance, on insecurity. So part of the moderating variables should be work experience, for instance. Work experience. Now, the argument is that police officers, for instance, who have 20 years experience in the police force might view the issue under investigation. The way they respond to your questionnaire might be different from police officers with less experience. Now, you understand what I'm trying to say when I'm trying to say that there are moderating variables that impact how your dependent or independent variables. interact or interface. So first, your interest will necessarily be done or it's derived from your questionnaires. And then there are moderating variables that also should be captured in your history. Now, if your study variable in your study, there's no point putting age, for instance, in your demographic data. If location, for instance, is not a moderating variable in your study, there's no point putting location in your demographic data. So you need to look at the peculiarities of your study, the variables in your study, how they interact, how they interface, the factors that are likely, to impact or influence the interaction. And these should be your moderating variables. This should be your moderating variables. Are we together? Any questions so far? Questions? Now, your research questions must be clear and lucid. They must be clear and lucid. They must be simple, not nebulous, not too much grammar. You're not trying to impress anybody. You're just trying to elicit information from your respondents. And you don't put it in question form. Now, it is research questions, but you don't put your instrument. It should not be in question form. You should put it in statement form. For instance, in a research question, your research question one is what is the impact of insecurity? What is the impact of policing practices, for instance, on insecurity in the Federal Capital Territory? What is the impact of insecurity what is the impact of policing practices on insecurity in the Federal Capital Territory? In your instrument, you should not now say, as a matter of fact, you shouldn't even put research question one. You should have items. Sometimes you put it on a tabular form. Some people don't put it on the tabular form, they just ask questions. Sometimes it could even be a yes or no that requires a yes or no answer. You will now say it should be statements, not research questions, statements. Impact of policing practices on insecurity in the Federal Capital Territory. In your instrument, it should not now be what is should be exposed. You now put it in statement form. Not in your instrument should not necessarily come in question form. Sometimes it is more acceptable to come as statements, so that the respondents will respond to it with a free mind. He's not under interrogation. He or she, they are all under interrogation. So they just, respond yes or no, to high extent, low extent, agreed, strongly agreed, strongly disagreed or disagree. You talk about if you're dealing with the 4-point Likert scale. Are we together at all, or I am soliloquizing? Are you understanding what I'm saying?
We are together, sir.
Yes,
We are together, sir.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
yes, sir. We are together.
We are together,
Are you
sir.
saying the research question should be in a statement or question form?
Statements, preferably.
Statement. Okay.
Statements.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Statements. All right. Any other questions? Questions, please. Again, it has been realized. Question. Anybody?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Jafaru. Yeah, Jafaru.
Yes, sir.
We are
Okay, so
Jafaru.
yes, sir. The question has to
I'm
do
with you,
with
sir.
hypothesis. You said something about hypothesis that wasn't very clear to me. Do you say every research question or every objective must have a hypothesis around it? Is my question clear, sir?
You're breaking. You're breaking.
Okay, so maybe it's my network.
But if I
Can you hear
understand
me?
you correctly, your question is, must every research question have objective hypothesis? And I say yes. researchers will have to,
Okay, no. So the hypothesis is built around the objective, right? Or around the research question?
I can hear you now, sir.
Oh, great. So I said the hypothesis should be built around the objective or around the research question.
You see, your research questions should flow from your objectives, right?
Yes.
In some cases, and I've said this here before, in some universities or in some departments, research questions, it is objectives, research questions, then hypothesis.
Yes, sir.
In some other universities, like in your guideline, that's our State University guideline, it is research questions, objectives, then hypothesis in this order.
Correct.
But whatever it is, if it is objectives before research questions, the research questions should flow from the objectives. If it is the other way around, the objectives should flow from the research questions. So also should the hypothesis. So you cannot go after bringing objectives and research questions, you now go and bring hypotheses from elsewhere. No, it must flow, it must be derived. The one should be derived from the other.
Okay, so if we're deriving from objective, for instance, assuming, going with our current guideline, which says the questions come before the objectives. So when we're doing our hypothesis, the question really is that should every objective have a hypothesis? That's the real question. Or we can have a hypothesis around the overall objective.
Yes, sir. That's the correct thing to do. That's the correct thing to do. Every objective, every research question should have an objective, or the other way around, depending on the guideline. And every research question should have a hypothesis. Sure. As one of the hypotheses are derived from the research questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Necessarily derived from the research questions. If that is the answer you're looking for, from the research questions. So if you have 5 research questions, you should have 5 hypotheses. If you have 6 research questions, you should have six hypotheses.
Thank you very much, sir.
Or in some cases, in some institutions, they refer to hypotheses as what's it called? My head is not correct today at all. Prepositions. Prepositions are hypotheses by other means. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Jafaro, Engineer Jafaro. Any other questions? Any other questions?
Preposition is sort of first. It's called preposition.
Yes. Even in some departments in senior university. Yes. Any other questions? Are we still together?
Yes, sir. I have a question, sir.
Okay. You have a question, Dorcas?
Yes, sir, I do.
Dorcas?
You said that the instrument should be in a statement form. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, so you said the instrument should be in a statement form, not question form, if I'm correct. So I just wanted to. Okay, so I just want to ask if this should be applied stricto sensu, like, or it's just a matter of preference.
That is the rule. That is actually the rule.
Okay,
where I'm coming from, but then you might go to some institutions and some professors might even prefer you to put the questions, but it is best to put it in statement form so you don't beat the respondents, you don't make it seem as if they are under interrogation. Yeah, mind you, a lot of people are usually reluctant to answer to respond to questionnaires. Sometimes they say they are not even sure what you are going to do with it. So if it is in question form, it even becomes more difficult for them to why are you asking me these questions? I don't know what I'm saying. But if you put it in statement form, it is more acceptable It's more relaxed, you know, and it gives you even a more, you know, open and honest responses. Perhaps that is the idea behind putting these things, you know, these statements for. Does that answer your question, Dorcas?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we proceed. Many students who, after going to the field, don't even know what a pilot test is. A student has his chapter 1 to 5 ready before the internal examiner. This happened yesterday. And you ask them, how did you validate your instrument? They are looking at you. Did you conduct a pilot study? They are looking at you. But they had their chapter 1 to 5 before you. So the question is, how did you determine the reliability of your instruments? How did you determine the validity of your instruments? Now, there's a section in your chapter 3 that talks about validity and reliability. And you know, but we've talked about reliability. I'm certain we've discussed reliability here before, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes students learn to forget. Reliability simply means having one or two experts in the subject area to look at your instruments and make corrections to determine whether they are reliable, they are valid or not. So if you finish developing your instruments, assuming without considering that you are finished developing your instruments, you have to take it for validity, beginning from your supervisor, your professors, or whoever it is that is supervising your project. You will look at it and you will make corrections. Sometimes you take it to some other lecturers within the department or within the faculty. They also look at it and make corrections. They are the ones who will determine whether or not your instrument is what is valid. It's valid. Because sometimes you might be using sentiments to respond, to ask questions. Because sometimes the students go into research areas and they become sentimental. There's no sentiment in research. You know, there are no sentiment. Sometimes you have already determined you have finished the investigation before the investigation. Sometimes you even see the answers, the findings of the study in some people's project title. No. The researcher should not be biased or prejudiced. You have to leave out your prejudices and your biases when you're going into investigation or research. So some of these things, that's the reason for why you have to do reliability test. You have to do validate your instruments before you take it out, you know, for to the field. Mind you, there are structured and there are unstructured questionnaires. There are structured and there are unstructured questionnaires. Structured questionnaires are the ones you try to develop. You know, you look at it, it is structured. It has a form. You know, unstructured questionnaires are formless. It is more like an informal. You are just asking questions. You know, out of your questions should be based on your research, your variables. It should be anchored on your variables. You know, of course, even when you're going into interview, you have structured and unstructured interview. Yeah, you have structured and unstructured focused group discussion, and a litany of other forms of instruments. You know, what I'm trying to arrive at is the need for pilot testing. I don't think we've even done this thing before. The need for pilot testing. Now, pilot testing is a small-scale preliminary study, you know, conducted before the main study. Pilot test is a small-scale preliminary study conducted, before the main study, chiefly to determine the feasibility or the workability, of the instrument. See if these instruments will do what they say they will do, or what you intend for them to do. Now, how do you go about our pilot test? What are the objectives of pilot testing? What are the objectives of pilot testing? Number one is to determine accessibility and feasibility. To determine accessibility and feasibility. Sometimes you want to conduct, I've seen students come with project topics with Nigeria as their area of coverage. How is it even possible for you as an individual to conduct a study that covers the entire Federal Republic of Nigeria? It is not feasible, it's not possible. It is impossible to do that as an individual. Research is not cheap. I hope if you actually want to conduct research is not cheap. Research is capital intensive, especially given the present economic condition that we face in Nigeria. Because many of you eventually cut corners, after using ChatGPT to generate all that you have generated. You now go and meet one statistician. You now just need. The people don't even go to the field. They will just use SPSS and put and generate and conduct discussion of findings, and they go to chapter 5 and submit. But it's so easy to know if you didn't go to the field. Now let me even tell you a story. Somebody who came to defend his PhD thesis once, and then he was talking about the area of study and how he went to so and so school and so and so school. And the professor asked him, "Did you go to the school by yourself?" He said, "Yes." "Can you describe the location of the school?" He said, "Yes." He now said, "Describe it." The man boy was now, he said, "Okay, let me tell you the truth. I did not go." The professor said, "Yes, because I started my career in that school. I was once a teacher in that particular school. So you can't deceive me that you went to that school because I will know." So sometimes students try to cut corners, and the people at in Jos, when we went to Kuru, NIPS, right? The professor mentioned it, the lady professor, of the need for us not to resort to AI and other. Conduct your research by yourself. Do the hard work. In the end, you beat your chest that this is my work. This is my work. And you'll be proud of it. You can be able to defend it, because it is your work. And so somebody has done chapter 1 to 5 without validity. Somebody has done chapter 1 to 5 without reliability, without pilot testing. In some other clients, that work will be thrown away because it shows that there is. How do you determine that those instruments are reliable? How do you determine that they are feasible? That the study can be feasible? Because sometimes when you go to pilot test and you come back, in some cases you say, "No, I mean this is too work, this is too difficult. I cannot go through it. I cannot go into this thing." And you go back and you change your instrument. You probably change the variables in your study to make it more feasible. And you go back and you rework your instruments, in such a way that the study can be feasible. And then you go back again and do another pilot test. So feasibility is key. It's part of the reason for why students, but it is a must, it's compulsory that you do pilot tests. And you come back with the results of the pilot test. As a matter of fact, the raw score of the analysis of your pilot testing should be attached as an appendix at the back of your work. The same thing with the validation. The lecturers that validated, the experts that validated your instrument, you have to come back with the copies of the validation, attach it to your work, so that we will be sure that your instruments were validated, so that we'll be sure we can confirm, that your instruments were pilot tested. Another objective of pilot testing is to test the research instruments. Pilot testing is also done to identify problems. We test logistical problems, technical problems, procedural issues that might arise during the main study. Pilot test is also done, to clarify the clarity of the survey tools or the questionnaires or the interviews. Pilot testing is also done to estimate time and cost to evaluate, the time they require, the time it takes to collect the data, for the study, budgetary constraints too, are also issues that we can figure out during pilot tests. These are some of the objectives of pilot testing. So why is pilot test important?
Sorry, sir, can you clarify to clarify the survey of water after the to test logistical problem? You mentioned to clarify something.
Objectives of pilot testing: assess feasibility, test research instruments, identify problems, estimate time and cost.
Yes.
Of the time it will take you to administer the instruments and the cost, and then ensure. Hello, are you there?
Yeah, we are hearing you. Yeah.
Evaluate the time required for data collection and the overall budgetary constraint. Within the budgetary constraints, how much will it cost for me to, go around these places to do the interview or administer the questionnaire or organize these people for focus group discussions. When you do pilot tests, you can determine the acceptability or because sometimes distributing questionnaires or conducting focus group discussion will cost you a lot of problem, a lot of headache. We do a lot of research and we see these things every day. Sometimes there's stubbornness, sometimes there's lack of cooperation, sometimes they don't know, a researcher is like, if you're going around traffic, a lot depends on the nature and character of your respondents. If you're driving around Abuja, you will see those people that are, those real estate people that are holding flyer, right? I don't know if this is even opposite. People driving by see them as pests. Most people don't even want to collect that which they are trying to deliver to you. And somehow this is how some people see researchers. So why are you disturbing me? Are you going to pay me? Are you going to pay me for responding to your instrument? So these are some of the issues you can determine if you go for pilot tests. What's my business with you? You now finish and you go and have PhD. And after I'm not helping you have to help me with something. These are some of the issues you can, and then you prepare for it when going back for the main study. Any questions? Questions, please. Questions.
Yes, sir. So one again, sir, sorry for taking you back a bit. When you talked about the structured and unstructured questionnaire, and you just talk a bit on the unstructured, that they are formless questions. So how can that one? Does it look in form of a personal interview that you do one-on-one with the person without having to write it down?
Yes, it's not written. You're just asking the question as it comes into your head. It's not structured. The structure is well written, is well designed, it has been validated, and the unstructured is just off heart. You're just asking questions. It has not been pre-prepared. I think that's the best way to put it.
How do we if I go for structured questionnaire in my pilot testing, so how do I do the analysis, since it's just something that came up from my head?
It is not. Yeah, you have the data now. You have the question. Is eliciting answers now. It is the answer that is the data that will be used for analysis. You have the responses. There are ways. And look, students say that they use and they read interview. But in your data analysis, the only thing there is the one that you did in questionnaire. So most times I even discourage students from coming up with that lie that they did focus group discussion or what's it called. Just say you use questionnaire because that's the only thing you analyzed in your chapter 4. Sometimes it might be difficult to do analysis for those other things. Meanwhile, the use of questionnaire is even now discouraged. If you're not conducting a study on perception, it is not even Because questionnaire is the easiest way to go conduct research. A survey. Questionnaire is the easiest way, it's the most direct way. And you just go and do your SPSS, you input and it brings out and then you do your analysis. But the professor was telling me the other day, like in modern times, it is discouraged. You know, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the easiest and most direct way to go about this. Because a lot of students will write that they did question, they use instrumentation. They say they did questionnaire, they did focus group discussion, they did interview, and so on like that. But by the time you go to chapter 4, the only thing they analyze was the questionnaire. So how about what are the report or the result of the focus group discussion that you did, or the interview that you did? You know, because it is more difficult to analyze, people just avoid it and restrict themselves to questionnaire. You know, I don't know if I've answered your question, Sunday.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, sir, please. One more clarification, doctor.
Okay, number 2, Thomas.
Please, what's the significant difference between reliability and validity with regard to research, or one word is used for the other?
No, they are not the same thing. Completely different. Validity, you carry your instrument and you go and give your supervisor. He now looks at it, he said, oh, this question is not like this, the grammar is wrong, I rephrase it, you know, or this one is wrong, this question is too direct, this question has K-leg, do it like this. That is validity. Okay, the English is very wrong, go and reward this, you understand? That is validity. Reliability, another word for reliability is pilot test. Pilot testing, you have to go to the field. The pilot test is conducted to determine reliability. Pilot testing, you have to go to the field, you know, and use a small group that is part of the larger population. And then you got your instrument, you go and administer it to them. And you collect the questionnaire back, and then you go and do analysis. And then you come up with a reliability index. After the analysis, the reliability index is low. What it means is that your instrument cannot do what it intends to do. If the reliability index is high, it's 8 points above, 7 points, even 7.1 they said is low. What it means is that it can do what it intends to do. But if the reliability index is low, it means you might have to rework. But validity is just you're carrying your instrument to an expert or to your supervisor to look at and make correction. Construction, you know, the nature and character of your questions as it relates to your research questions, your instruments. The nature and character of the instrument as it relates to your research questions. You know, are they linked? And do you put something different in your instrument and in your questionnaire, you have something different? You know, that is validity. You use red biro to make corrections, and you go back and you make those corrections. And you come back and the lecturer, the professor confirms that you have actually repeated the corrections that you made. That is validity. But reliability is pilot testing. Reliability, you have to go to the field to conduct pilot tests. More like a smaller version of what you would do in the main study. But those that you use, the group that you use in your pilot test must not be part of the main study. So if you're doing your pilot test if you're conducting a study of the Nigerian police, for instance, if you're doing your pilot test in Gariki police station, when you're doing the main study, it is advised you avoid the Gariki police station again. You use other police stations and not use Gariki. If you're doing your pilot test, your respondents are teachers, say upper basics teachers, for instance, and you go and you conduct your pilot test in area 10 primary school. When you're conducting your main study, do not go back to that area 10 primary school to collect data. Use other primary schools or junior secondary schools, upper basic schools, say the FCT, if that is your area of study. Have I answered your question, Father?
Yes, doctor.
So they are two different things.
I think from what you explained now, there's reliability that is closed, that is another name for pilot test.
Yes, you conduct pilot tests to determine reliability
Okay.
of the instruments. The instruments are reliable and they do what they can do what they intend to do. Any other question?
Thank you, doctor. As we go on, I'm sure it will become clearer and clearer.
Okay, no problem.
Yes,
Any other question?
yes, doctor. Yes, sir. You said the respondent used during the pilot testing should be eliminated from the main study. Is that the standard, or why is it so?
Yes, it is a standard, sir. It is a standard. It's a global standard. It's not even a Nigerian standard. It's a global standard.
Does it mean they will influence the data, or what that makes it to be like that?
That is more like duplication. And there is even no guarantee that if you go back to them, they will give you the same responses that they gave you before. So just avoid them completely.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes. Any other question? Questions, please.
Yes, sir, I have another question.
Okay.
So for pilot testing, when one gathers this data at the field during the focus group, whatever interview, when you come back and analyze the data, is it okay if you adjust your instrument based on the data that you put together after the analysis?
If you adjust your what?
If you, after analyzing the data you collected during the pilot testing,
Yes.
is it okay to adjust your questions after analyzing the data you put together?
Yes. If the reliability index is low, then you have to go back to the drawing board. If the reliability index is low, then you have to go back to the drawing board. That might even mean adjusting your research questions, or even adjusting your what do you call it? Your variables, the variables in your study. Because the pilot test will reveal a lot. The pilot testing will reveal a lot. You know, so based on the revelation, you can go back and make necessary adjustments. That might even include adjusting your research questions. And if you adjust your research questions, your instruments necessarily will have to be adjusted.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. We may have to stop this class here. Somebody is looking for me. I have to leave my Oga to come and briefly teach you. So as we go along, if there are other questions, so those of you who have not those of you who have not developed your instrument, this is another opportunity for you to quickly develop your instrument and send to the email address that was provided earlier. So that we'll look at it and then make necessary corrections and send back to you. The best of the instruments that were sent to me was sent by David Jafaru. She tried to fault it. I've not seen where I can find the fault. But in research, nothing is too good that it cannot be made better. So make an attempt to immediately, while we are still I'm trying to round up this class, make an attempt to develop instruments, research instruments based on your questionnaire, and then send to me as quickly as you can, so that we'll review it. And then
Thank you, sir.
But I've sent my own instruments since, but I've not seen any whether they've corrected it or not.
It is me that will correct it, sir. So
I sent it before we go to
don't say they attack me directly.
Oh, okay, because you are told that there is a panel that will look into it.
No, don't say they, it's me that will look at it.
Okay, but I've sent before we travel to Josio, so I've not seen any.
Yes, I saw a few, and there are 40 students in this class. There were less than 7 people that sent previously. So I'm expecting close to 35 research instruments in my email address.
Okay, so those that some of us that we didn't have any response from it means our instrument is okay.
I will respond, sir, as we go along.
Okay.
I've not had the time to look at it. I'll look at it and respond.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. If there's any other question, this is the time. In the absence of questions,
Remember the days we were young, wild and free, basic getting spread.